Hey everyone, my name is Dallas Shepard. I'm one of the small group leaders here at High Point Young Adults. I'm so glad that you guys came tonight, and I'm looking forward to going through this text with you. So the passage we're in tonight is John 4:43 through 54. So I'll let y'all turn there. As you're turning, just for context, we know from the beginning of this chapter that Jesus has been coming from Judea through Samaria that Ryan talked about during worship night last week, and now Jesus is in Galilee. And it's actually the region that Jesus grew up in. So Jesus, as I said, is in Galilee, but he's specifically in the town of Cana. And at this point in his ministry, he's already well known to be someone who works miracles. And so with that, let's start with John 4:43. After the 2 days, he departed for Galilee, for Jesus himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in his own hometown. So when he came to Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him, having seen all that he had done in Jerusalem and at the feast, for they too had gone to the feast. So he came again to Cana in Galilee, where he had made water wine. And at Capernaum there was an official whose son was ill. When this man heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went to him and asked him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. So Jesus said to him, "Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe." The official said to him, "Sir, come down before my child dies." Jesus said to him, "Go, your son will live." The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and went on his way. As he was going down, his servants met him and told him that his son was recovering. So he asked them the hour when he began to get better. And he said to them, "Yesterday at the 7th hour, the fever left him." The father knew that was the hour when Jesus had said to him, "Your son will live." And he himself believed, and all his household. This was now the second sign that Jesus did when he had come from Judea to Galilee. So in this passage, there are 3 points that I think John hits home. And so I want to break it up into 3 sections. So the first is Jesus, our healer. The second is idolizing the signs. And the third is a call to life-giving faith. So first section is Jesus, our healer. I want to reread starting in verse 50 on the miracle. And so we'll get started in verse 50. Jesus said to him, "Go, your son will live." The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and went on his way. And as he was going down, his servants met him and told him his son was recovering. So he asked them the hour when he began to get better. And they said to him, "Yesterday at the 7th hour, the fever left him." The father knew that was the hour when Jesus had said to him, "Your son will live." So just for context, from Cana, where Jesus is, to Capernaum, where the official son is at least 20 miles away. And so we see with the official's recollection that his son began to get better at the same time as his exchange with Jesus. We see Jesus heals a boy from 20 miles away. We can so quickly glaze over this, and so, and I can too. I wanted to break up this miracle into 2 sections just to show just how incredible it is. So the first point I want to make is that Jesus from 20 miles away could see and with detail know the issues going on in this boy's body. I was terrible in biology and chemistry, so I can't know anything about anyone who's standing right in front of me, but Jesus has incredible power to know in detail what even the doctors of the day couldn't know, and even our doctors today probably may not even know, and that's incredible. Jesus not only knew what was going on, but he had the compassion, the power, ability, and authority to give the remedy to this boy's sickness from 20 miles away with a few words. Jesus didn't have to have this huge ritual that took an hour. He just said, "Go, your son will live." and his son was healed. So again, we can so easily glaze over the story and miss just how incredible it is. If you're anything like me, in my nearsightedness and probably my pride, I forget just how different Jesus is from me. Yes, he put on flesh. Yes, he was a baby. Yes, he had to go to the bathroom. But he is altogether different than us. And this is one of the many signs that John records to help us see that, to make it plain for us. So, this is the end of the first point. So what does this mean for us? The first point I want to make is that we have a God who sees us and knows us better than we even see or know ourselves. And the second point is that we have a God, well, he came to earth and put on flesh and did signs that show that he is altogether different and greater than we are. So there's something else that stands out to me in this passage. It's like the second thing that really stood out when I read it. First was the miracle, and the second was Jesus' response to the official's request. It seems random, but let's read it again. It starts in the middle of verse 47. It says, "He went to him and asked him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. So Jesus said to him, 'Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe.'" So the "you" in this sentence is actually "you all." So Jesus' words are an indictment on the Galileans at large and not just this man. So in essence, Jesus is saying, unless you all see signs and wonders, you will not believe. So what is Jesus getting at? I want to look at a couple other passages to help explain. Let's go back to chapter 2. So this is in Jerusalem during the Passover feast. I'll start at John 2:23 through 24. It reads, "Now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs he was doing. But Jesus on his part did not entrust himself to them because he knew all people." So we see here, people saw the signs. Many people believed in Jesus. But there's an issue with their belief that Jesus saw because he knew all people. And so let's go back to the passage tonight. So John 4, verse 43 through 45. It says, "After the 2 days he departed for Galilee, for Jesus himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in his hometown. So when he came to Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him, having seen all he had done in Jerusalem at the feast, for they too had gone to the feast." So we're seeing the connection, hopefully, between chapter 2 and chapter 4 in these passages. So these Galileans, they go to Jerusalem for the Passover, and they see Jesus doing these signs. They become Jesus fans, and when he comes back to Galilee, because of the signs they saw him do in Jerusalem, they welcomed him as the now famous miracle-working Jesus. They may have also had some pride in the fact that Jesus was from the area, so it was their hometown boy who was doing signs in Jerusalem, coming back home. So that's kind of what we're seeing there. The next verse is kind of an aside, but I really thought it was worth sharing, and it was so interesting to me when I read it. It comes out of John 7. It's Jesus' brothers talking about what Jesus should do in his ministry. So check this out. It's John 7, 3 through 5. I'll let you guys turn there. So John 7, 3 through 5. "So his brothers said to him," they're talking to Jesus, "Leave here and go to Judea, that your disciples also may see the works you are doing. For no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. For not even his brothers believed him. It seems like a crazy thing to think about, but Jesus' brothers, we see here is they're engaged and talking to Jesus about what he should and shouldn't do in ministry. Yet they don't have saving faith. They don't believe in Jesus. So those are some negative examples that we see and the dangers that John is presenting in his book. I want to go to this last passage. It's more of a positive example. So it's after Jesus' encounter with the woman at the well that we talked about on worship night last week. So it's John 4:39 through 42. So John 4:39 through 42 reads, "Many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me all that I ever did." So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him, Jesus, to stay with them. And he stayed there 2 days. And many more believed because of his word. They said to the woman, "It is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this is indeed the Savior of the world." I just want to highlight a portion there. It said, "And many more believed because of his word." Notice in this verse the cause of their belief and how it contrasts from the Galileans. The Samaritans believed not only the signs, which, Jesus showed a sign to the woman at the well, and showed her that Jesus is someone worth paying attention to, because of her testimony of, "He told me all that I ever did." But they believed not only the signs, but Jesus' word, his testimony that Jesus is the Savior of the world. That is saving faith. We'll talk about this more later, but saving faith is to believe in the words of Jesus, not only to recognize him as a miracle worker, but to trust him enough to believe his word, his testimony about who he is. So one more passage in this section. Jesus raised a question to his disciples that I think summarizes this so well. And it says, so it's in Mark 8:27 through 29. "And Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way he asked his disciples, 'Who do people say that I am?' And they told him, 'John the Baptist, and others say Elijah, and others one of the prophets.' And he asked them, 'But who do you say that I am?' And Peter answered, 'You are the Christ.'" We can recognize Jesus as a miracle worker. We can, like Jesus' brothers, be excited about Jesus' ministry in the church. But the most important question is that we ask ourselves, who do you believe he is? Do you trust his word? Do you trust what he says about himself? So now we're on to our final point, which is a call to life-giving faith. I know we've read through the passage several times. I want to do that just one more time. And I want us to focus on the exchange between Jesus and the official's son. So we'll start in verse 47. It says, "When this man heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went to him and asked him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. So Jesus said to him, 'Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe.' The official said, 'Sir, come down before my child dies.' Jesus said to him, 'Go, your son will live.' The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and went on his way. As he was going down, his servants met him and told him that his son was recovering. So he asked them the hour when he began to get better. And they said to him, 'Yesterday at the 7th hour, the fever left him.' The father knew that was the hour when Jesus said to him, 'Your son will live.' And he himself believed, and all his household. This was now the second sign that Jesus did. when he come from Judea to Galilee. Now, honestly, if you think about the official and what's going on in his head in this interaction, I really feel for him. I mean, he's in desperation to have his son healed. He heard that Jesus was going to Galilee. He was in Cana, and so he very likely walked at least 20 miles to get to Jesus. And he comes to Jesus wanting healing for his son. And Jesus has a general mark for the people of Galilee and kind of blows off this guy with his first statement. Not only does Jesus kind of blow him off in his first request to Jesus, but he challenged the man again by not doing what he asked. So, as you can see, what verse is it? It's verse 49. The official said, "Sir, come down before my child dies." So he's asking Jesus to come down to Capernaum to heal his son. I think this official is thinking full and well he needs Jesus to actually be there to perform the miracle. So he's asking, "Please just come down with me and heal my son in Capernaum." Instead, Jesus says, "Go, your son will live." And I think we can see the end of the story. We've got the whole book. We've got the whole account. So we think, oh, well, it's this great happy ending. Well, remember, he's 20 miles away. I don't know if we don't really think he fully has a saving faith with Jesus before this interaction. So it's a pretty hard thing, what Jesus says to this official. Jesus didn't comfort him and say, "Yes, I will go with you and do what you're asking." He just says, "Go and walk, and your son will be healed." So what is Jesus even doing here? He could have made it a lot easier. This man is already in distress, but he chose not to. Why? To me, I think Jesus is challenging him to not believe just because he sees signs. And we've already seen that was an issue that he addressed in his first remark. Jesus is challenging him to trust his words enough to walk the 20 miles back home without seeing the miracle. Let's go back to why the Samaritans believed. They believed Jesus' words. And to believe Jesus' word requires trust. And John the writer is making it clear that general belief in Jesus' signs without trust will not last, and it's not saving faith. But the good news for this man is that Jesus, just like he knew what the official's son needed for physical healing, he knew what this man and his family needed for spiritual healing. And Jesus loved this man too much to not confront his unbelief in who Jesus was. Even though it caused more discomfort for him in the beginning, in the end, it was for his belief and for his eternal good. This account ends as we read with the official son being healed and life-giving faith being brought to the man in the household. So I just want to add 3 last notes on this passage and let y'all have discussion. So the first is that Jesus, as we know, does not always choose to heal, and he often has answers for our lives that we see only causes more discomfort. I pray for myself and for us that we would trust his words and that he uses pain and discomfort in our lives to push us to him who is our ultimate eternal good. The second is that we see the miracle was done before this man ever had to trust Jesus at his word. This highlights a key truth that this miracle and in general, whether or not God chooses to answer our prayers as we think he should, is not dependent on our strength of faith. He works in ways we do not see every day. Not because we earned it by believing, but because he loves us enough to intercede in our lives and call us to life-giving faith. And lastly, the only true way this official wouldn't lose his son is because in a few years they would see God offering Jesus' son for him. We love you, we're praying for you, and we hope you all have great discussions. See ya.